U.S. Supreme Court listened to arguments around the Affordable Care Act on Wednesday. At issue is a clause that specifies who is eligible for subsidies provided by the federal government to help purchase insurance. Conservatives argue the law clearly says people can only get financial aid if their state sets up its own health insurance marketplace or exchange. Currently, there are only 13 states with a healthcare exchange program. Oklahoma is not among them, but Oklahomans living in other states are affected. For answers, we spoke to our Washington Bureau Chief, Chris Castile. Chris, what kind of impact could this have on Oklahomans and other people living in states without an established healthcare exchange?
Well, immediate and big. The first thing, Dave, would be that, so in this year, in this calendar year, 2015, there's an estimated 100,000 Oklahomans who signed up in the individual market to buy insurance who will get federal subsidies. So that's like 100,000, Oklahomans and their dependents maybe. I don't know how many that would be, that would lose the federal subsidies, which would mean they would no longer be able to afford health care insurance. There's just no way. It's just too expensive for most of these people. We're talking about people nationwide who qualify for subsidies if their income is between 100% and 400% of the poverty level. So you're talking basically like low to moderate income people, and it depends on how big your family is. So they would lose their subsidies, not be able to afford health insurance anymore. And according to the Health Insurance Association of America, which has filed a brief in this case, what that is going to lead to in all these states, and there's 37 states like Oklahoma that have federal exchanges, nobody's going to be able to afford to buy health insurance on the individual market. Those markets are just going to collapse. There's not going to be an individual health insurance market anymore because there's just not enough. In order for an insurance market to work, Dave, you've got to have a lot of people in it to spread the risk. You have really sick people and you have really healthy people and everybody in between. And so that can make the coverage cheaper because it spreads that risk out, over all of those people. If you wind up with just really sick people buying health insurance because they absolutely need it, it'll just, be so far out of reach financially that the markets themselves won't be able to survive because they won't have any customers.
Well, that's right, because
that's a long answer.
But that's what they wanted initially. They wanted a lot more younger people to hop into these exchanges because they were healthier.
Exactly.
And they thought it could sustain.
And that's where the individual mandate comes in. That's how all these things are supposed to work together, in the law. You got the individual, you'll still have the individual mandate, which if you're over a certain amount, if you have an income over a certain amount, you're required to purchase health insurance. But if you have trouble affording it, we'll help you out. So, and that is a way, that was, one of the ways to get young people in it so you can spread that risk around. So you say to the young person, you've got to buy it. You don't have a choice now. You've got to buy health insurance, but we'll help you. So you're right. You lose so much of the population that you're trying to get into the individual market to make it more affordable. Now, I keep making this distinction because it's important. Most of us get our health insurance from what's called the group market. We get it at our work, at a large employer, small employer that buys it in where there's all kinds of people to spread that risk around. But if you go out and just try to buy health insurance on your own, which is what we're talking about here in the individual market, it's just been cost prohibitive for, decades, really, for most people to go out and just buy a health on their own, not connected to a business or anything, to their employer. Just go out and buy health insurance. Just, ask them how much it costs.
U.S. Supreme Court, as we mentioned, listened to arguments surrounding the Affordable Care Act today. Chris, what were some of the arguments, and do we have any indication on how the justices might rule?
It's such a close call. I assume that a lot of people listening know, the basics of this case now. In the law, what it says is that, it talks about exchanges established by the state. Question being, did that limit the subsidies, the federal tax credits, to exchanges established by the state? If so, that means no tax credits, subsidies to buy insurance in the 37 states that don't have state-run exchanges. So most of the arguments, David, it was almost 90 minutes we're kind of circular about, this whole issue of what Congress intended. Why would they do this? Why would they limit, subsidies? If they're trying to make insurance more affordable, why limit it just to the state to run exchanges? Was this supposed to be some kind of incentive to states to set up their own exchanges? And if so, is that an incentive or coercion? Because as some of the liberal justices were saying, what they're saying is like, so is that what Congress intended to do? What we're going to tell the states, you either set up your own exchange or your insurance market is going to go into a death spiral. And if so, that kind of coercion from Congress is unconstitutional. So that's one side of it. And you had kind of the usual breakdown with the liberals like, Sotomayor and Ginsburg and Kagan and Breyer, who obviously were sympathetic to the Obama administration's arguments, and then some like Scalia, maybe Justice Alito, who more sympathetic with the people challenging the subsidies. But Justice Roberts, who was the key vote a couple of years ago to allow the individual mandate to survive, he was really quiet today.
So he may be the wild card in this. I say he may be the wild card in this because he's usually fairly
may be the wild
vocal.
card, and Justice Kennedy may be the wild card. And Kennedy seemed to go both ways. He seemed like he could go either way on this. So in which case it would come down to Roberts. And the question is, if he saved the administration's bacon, a couple of years ago, is he going to do that again? And if so, is he going to look at what would happen if he were to rule against these subsidies? What you and I just discussed, 100,000 people in Oklahoma, an estimated, 12 million nationwide that would lose these subsidies, and what would happen? Is that going to be a consideration to him? And we'll just have to see. We'll know by probably late June, how they decide in this case. I think it's going to be close. I saw some of the tweets from the veteran Supreme Court reporters after the argument saying that they just can't tell. It's just too close to call. But it's a big deal. It's a huge case.
Well, aside from the weather, there hasn't been anything going on in Washington this week, right?
Not a thing. No. It's been nothing having to do with the massive agency staying open, or the Israeli prime minister, warning against a nuclear agreement, or today an override of the Keystone, failed override of the Keystone. It's been the usual dead week here in D.C.
And the U.S. Supreme Court listening to arguments surrounding the Affordable Care Act. Chris, as always, thanks for your knowledge and your analysis. We appreciate it.
All right, absolutely, Dave. Take care.
All right, you too. See ya.